We jump now in the inquiry to discussions with Suzanne Winter over the report produced by the forensic accountants and the conclusions and what meetings took place between her on behalf of the post office and the forensic accountants discussing the report. We also look on what impact then this report, which suggests that there was potentially insufficient evidence of a crime nor a perpetrator, as well as suggesting that there were bugs in Horizon, what impact that had on the post office as an organisation, not only in the investigation team, but more widely as well. Let's jump into the inquiry.
Do you recall, you mentioned a meeting, do you recall having a meeting with Mr. McLaughlin, his then solicitors, and the forensic accountants who authored this report, as well as senior post office management representatives, in around January 2005?
No.
What meeting do you recall?
I recall meeting with a forensic expert. I think it may have been this company, along with one of our auditors and trainers, and it was the Horizon system was shown to him and explained, but that's the only meeting I recall.
That sounds like a kind of pre-meeting during their investigation while they're gathering data for the reports to try and get a full grip on how Horizon's working to enable them to do the investigation and the subsequent report and come to their conclusions. So she seems to be suggesting, no, I didn't meet them post-conclusion to discuss what they found, but yes, we did meet them pre-conclusion whilst they were in the investigatory stage to find out, to give them information that they needed about Horizon.
Do you recall discussion at that meeting of concerns about how the Horizon system could have generated a series of transactions independently of Mr. McLaughlin or his staff?
No, I don't recall. I don't.
So they would presumably either be kind of phantom transactions, errors in the system, or in transactions inserted by someone other than the staff at the post office, which would presumably be via the remote access which has been established.
Recall this meeting that you've mentioned.
But in the context of meeting with the forensic accountants themselves, do you recall discussion of how the system could have led to the conclusions that they've reached?
Whenever I met this person, the person from the company, he hadn't produced this report. This was whenever he was investigating. This report had not come out.
What was the prosecuting service's view of this report, insofar as they discussed that with you?
Fully, it had to be disclosed.
So there we are, we have got confirmation that it was disclosed to them, so they were aware of it, which was one of the questions we had previously.
What impact did this report have on the assessment of the case by you, first of all?
Sorry, could you just repeat that?
What impact did this report have on the assessment of the case, first of all, by you? Did it impact upon your assessment of the case at all?
No.
Wow. I mean, you don't have to agree that something's right, but surely at least gives you pause for thought. But I mean, no impact at all. The fact that they're potentially suggesting, well, from the evidence available, there's no evidence of a crime, a perpetrator, or a loss. You would think in a case where you're alleging someone's taken money, that's pretty devastating to your entire case, so at least worthy of further investigation.
Did it impact upon the prosecuting service's view of the case, insofar as they discussed that with you?
I would have discussed this case with the barrister and with the lawyers, and yes, they felt that this report, of course, had to be disclosed, but they still decided to progress. It was up to them, it was their decision.
So that's a slightly different answer, I guess, from their point of view. It's not saying there was no impact, but they still felt on balance, that they should proceed with the case. So that is different, saying it had no impact.
Whether it progressed to court or not.
Sorry, am I misunderstanding? When you say this report had to be disclosed, my understanding is this report had been disclosed to you by the defence.
No, the report had been disclosed to the prosecution and myself, Sir Winter.
Yeah, sure. So it wasn't a question of either the prosecution or you disclosing it. Miss Price's questions are addressed to whether or not, putting it bluntly, it made any difference to you a view of whether the prosecution should continue.
I understand the question, but it was not my decision to have...
No, I follow that. But insofar as you perhaps you didn't have an opinion, but insofar as you had an opinion, did it affect your view of whether the prosecution should continue?
Yes, I did have the opinion it should continue.
Fine, right.
Did you share the report with the Post Office, or as it would have been then, the Royal Mail Criminal Law Team?
I'm not sure.
So the Royal Mail Criminal Law Team, if you remember, is the next step on the flowchart that we've seen previously when bringing a case. It sits with the investigator, and once they're satisfied, they refer it onto the Criminal Law Team. So it would seem quite, and it does suggest in that flowchart process that all documentation, evidence and case files are passed to them for them to make a decision. So it'll be interesting to see whether that happened in this case, because if not, that would appear to go against their own policy.
Sure, because this was not a criminal law team case.
Yes, but in terms of the wider import of this report, did you share it with anyone at all within the Post Office?
That this would have been shared up to the head of security.
You say it would have done.
Yes.
How did it make its way to the head of security?
In my case file, you get a green jacket case file. And John Scott, I know, had sight of that case file.
As far as you're aware, was that report shared any more widely with anyone outside of the security team?
I'm not aware of that. It would have went to the, as we said, the Crown, but within Post Office, that report then would have eventually filtered up to the head of security.
Can you recall any steps being taken by the Post Office in response to this report?
No.
Wow. So a report which is potentially suggesting you need to think again about a prosecution that you're launching and potentially wider system failings, and certainly some procedural failings with regards to retention of data. There's zero impact on an organisation as massive as the Post Office, as far as she's aware, of course.
That document can come down now, thank you.